Welcome to the State of Music. My name's Paul John Dykes, and today I'm delighted to be joined by James Fox. James, how are you?
Very well, man. How are you?
I'm brilliant. Thank you very much. Under the circumstances, obviously we're locked away, and I'm always interested to hear from musicians, from live performers who have had their livelihood snatched away. And I know that a lot of people are struggling in all walks of life, but I feel, James, that the live entertainment industry has almost been just left to its own devices, which is quite sad.
I couldn't agree more, mate. It's absolutely been battered, isn't it? And even when things last summer and, looking forward start to sort of open up, eventually we're at the back of the queue for all that, just because of the nature of what we do and the big groups, and the proximity of people, even the people on stage or in the audience. It's, even now with glimmers of hope on the horizon, it still feels like, there's a long way off. And it's been a battering financially, mentally, and everything else. It's, a tough time for musicians and performers for sure. It's really tough.
The big thing for me, you mentioned how difficult it's been mentally. And I think, we've seen the effects. We know that figures for mental health issues are up, suicides are up. And I've looked at the music industry over a number of years, and I've spoken to people within the industry. And sometimes the mental health aspect, James, is one that is kind of under the surface. We don't really know what musicians are going through. I've spoken to a few who have gone onto that roller coaster, on the road, that kind of lifestyle that, before you know it, you're chasing success and it's difficult to cope. Sometimes it's alcohol, sometimes it can be drugs. But the mental health aspect is something that's come to light. We know the big names who have suffered in the music industry, James. Is there anything more that can be done to help people in your profession?
Well, that's a big question. They don't teach you. Even if people go to music colleges or like actors and theaters and things that like music acting courses and stuff, they never teach you that. I remember doing my first long run in the musical. I did like a 3-year stint in a musical, and I just come off the back of just being playing pubs and clubs with a guitar in Wales for over a decade, and I could see even the people that were trained actors and musicians struggling with all the things that come along with it, like the repetition of the same show, 3-hour show every night, the loneliness, the sort of isolation, the travel, the expectations, the fame. I came through a system on TV that meant I was that the fame was a lot of fame, and sort of but maybe not I was famous for being famous. I came from a music TV show, but it wasn't the music necessarily driving the fame. It was all very celebrity driven, and no one teaches you how to cope with that. And I've had a lot of chats with people prior to that show I did and a few other shows about how they just leave you sort of, they give you all this fame and this platform, then they let you carry on. The mental health side of it, the show was Fame Academy I did with the BBC back in 2003, and there was no aftercare. I'm just talking about that in particular. And I think the same with colleges, the same with the music business. There's not a go-to mental health organization or package or support that recognizes the pressures and strains on that part of the business. And especially from my side of it, fame and learning to cope with that. I went onto that show, no one knew who I was, and I came out of it after 12 weeks maybe of 10 million people every Saturday. And we weren't slowly drip fed the audiences and the public. It was from nothing to that, to going out and everybody knew exactly who you were. And I just spent a week in my flat crying my eyes out in a ball. I think everyone's looking at me. Everyone knows who I am. I can't cope with this. And there was no help for that. You just turn to family and friends, and something just hard for them, and they don't understand what you're going through. So I feel, in answer to your question, a lot more can be done, but I don't know, this specific areas and addictions and things that come from that with different sources of help that are needed. But for me, it's hard to put it under one umbrella, but not enough is done for sure.
This is a big thing. People have this interest in music. They've got a love in music. And, when we're in a situation where we're isolated due to the pandemic, due to lockdowns, restrictions, one thing I certainly do, and a lot of people do, is they turn to music. So they'll stick on the tunes, they'll stick on in whatever form. I still listen to CDs, James. I'm showing my age. So we listen to music, and it helps us get through difficult times. It always does, doesn't it? I mean, you hear a song, it transports you back to a certain time of your life. It makes you feel happy. It's sometimes melancholic, but it's uplifting. But the people creating the music sometimes are suffering from their art. So although you're making us feel better, you're actually suffering as a result of it.
That's a very no one's put that question to me before, and I tell people this, my close mates as well. I couldn't listen to music for 2 years. Well, and this is when I was making music and writing music and in shows. I couldn't sit down and put my favorite CD on, because I found it stressful. It can take you to places, but it can also remind you, it's very powerful. And I've seen the power of music in so many places. I do a lot of work for the military out in Afghanistan and Iraq and all these places, and you can see the power of music when you play for these audiences and the reaction they get, and how it can take them back, back home and slices of home and give them that morale boost and everything. But it can also have a downside on musicians. Like you said, I found it very hard to sit and relax and listen to music. I guess because I create it, and I've had an interesting relationship with music. I'm not sure that answers your question, but I do understand what you mean. It's a powerful thing, and it can help, but it can also be, some people won't listen to certain songs. It reminds them of someone that's gone or a bad time in their life, and it's so powerful, as you said.
Oh, definitely. Now, it does take us back to, falling in love with music. It's always had that omnipresence in my life because I'm growing up, I can hear the music in my mum and my dad. I come from a small mining village in Fife in Scotland. You come from a similar background. James, talk to us about your love of music, falling for music.
Yeah, I mean, it's weird because I grew up, my dad was a drummer in the workingmen's club. The workingmen's club scene was, back then, massive. Prior to that was a massive part of my upbringing. My dad was a drummer, and I sort of find myself on side stage, maybe 10, 11 years old, watching him, and probably shouldn't have been there, but just sort of taking in this environment, and music in the valleys, with choirs and singing. It's a very musical place, and still is, the South Wales Valleys. So to have that in the house and to have it in the communities, anytime you get more than 2 or 3 Welsh people together, especially if it's in a pub, the singing starts. It was very powerful, and I'm glad it found me. It found me when I was like 7. I say found me because I just stumbled upon music when I was 7, watching a Billy Joel concert that was on TV, and I was just sort of captivated by this guy. I thought that's what I want to do. That is something happening here. This is incredible, and I was very lucky because a lot of people go through their childhood and the early teens not knowing what they want to do, and for me, when I found music, I was like, this is what I want to do, which is maybe a poison chalice at times, but I was very lucky and very happy that I was in that environment and it was supported within that environment. And there's so much passion and so much passion for music in the valleys. Within 2 miles of where I grew up was the Manic Street Preachers and the Stereophonics, bands taking on the world, and it's clearly something in that area, and maybe it's a fight to get out, to do something, because the options and opportunities are limited in these places, especially for musicians. So I think it really, if you've got it in you, those areas really bring it out of you. We've got world champion boxers, snooker players, bands, all from like within a 3 or 4 mile radius in those valleys. So I think if you have a passion and a talent, it's it can really drive that. I'm very grateful for, looking back at growing up in the valleys. It shaped me for sure.
Oh, that's great. I mean, see, when you think about going out there and playing working men's clubs and, earning your spurs, if you like, earning your stripes, how important was that to your development as a musician? That
is an apprenticeship that if you can get through that, if you can get through 10, 11 years, 7 nights a week in workmen's clubs in the valleys, I think, like I said, I've gigged in Afghanistan, and that was a breeze compared to some of these places. It was, it's cutting your teeth properly, and I think that apprenticeship's not there anymore. And I think a lot of people get dropped into this business and they fold like a cheap tent because they haven't had that apprenticeship. It's just not there for them. I'm very grateful. I call upon that, even if it was a Broadway gig I was doing, or like you said, Afghanistan, or Top of the Pops, whatever it is, you call upon that experience, because whatever's gone, everything has gone wrong. You've seen every situation if you've done 10 years of workmen's clubs, And I'm very grateful that I caught the latter end of that that scene, I guess.
When you're talking about fame, it's a word that we use so often. And again, showing my age, I remember Fame when it was Fame on the TV rather than the Fame Academy. But Fame Academy launched, and it was around about that time that we've seen a lot of these talent shows on TV. And I guess back then there was a novelty aspect to it. And the number of people that tuned into these shows was incredible. I think very quickly what sometimes happened, what you started seeing, is that these people's dreams, whoever it may have been, the level of their talent, a lot of their dreams were being shattered live in front of the whole nation. You're standing in front of the judges, it's all being filmed. But it was a route into music. It was a massive route that had never really been there before. And I know there were similar shows in the past, but not quite like the way Fame Academy, X Factor, and all these different shows. Pop Idol was another one. So when you're looking at Fame Academy, every now and again from a viewer, you would feel an affinity with certain people who you knew were in it for the music. And right. Yeah, they might have had great voices, they might have been great performers, but you knew that there was a bit of an edge. There was a musical element to certain individuals. And I think we got that from yourself, James. When you walked in to the Fame Academy, and I watched the whole thing back then, I watched that whole series. When you walk into that, was it the fame or was it the music? Was it something that, with hindsight now, you can quite clearly define that?
Yeah, no, you're right. It's... like I said, after 11 years of working with this club and wanted to take that next step into the music business, what I thought the music business was, I was desperate. And to be honest, so desperate for it. I was 27, which back then, the early noughties, if you were outside of 18 to 24 and wasn't in a boy band, then they'd say your career was over. There was no route in anymore. The historical routes into the music business were getting few and far between because all the slots and opportunities to get into the music business were taken up by like Pop Idol, America, all these X Factors, all these things. So I sort of resisted that for as long as I could. This was the second season of Fame Academy. Maybe there were like 2 or 3 Pop Idols before that, and I could just, and I did music the right way, as I thought. I was touring and gigging and trying to earn my stripes, as you said. But I spoke to my manager at the time and I said, there's no other way in here. How it's just the market's saturated. I'm not going to be able to get in unless I go for one. And it was seen as selling out if you're a proper musician to go on these shows. So I was very worried about that. But when Fame Academy came, it had the right ethos, I guess, in terms of you had to be a songwriter, you had to play an instrument, and it had the right blueprint. I thought, well, this is, if ever you're going to do one, and I feel like I need to because time was ticking, this would be the one that had more credibility. I was disappointed by the content because at the end of the day, it was run by Endemol, who ran Big Brother. It was still like a weekly karaoke contest on a Big Brother show. So the content was disappointing, but yeah, I was so excited to get in there and learn. I wanted to learn, why am I still in the clubs? Why am I not in the record deal? What can I get from these people? How much information, what tools do I need? Yeah, the fame it comes with it. And that's something that I've never been comfortable with, and at that time, with the height of it, it was crippling. So there was zero interest in that, and 100% interest in developing my craft, and that show should have been the route for that.
I mean, at the end of it, you've spoken about how it affects you. 1 minute, you are James walking down the street. Within a week or a couple of weeks, everybody knows who you are. Everybody will have an opinion on you and your music and your craft. And, no one actually prepares you for it. I sometimes think about that with footballers, James. You get all these footballers coming from working class backgrounds and they have this talent. But, when they're being spoken to and every guy wants to be them and every girl wants to be with them, it must be so difficult. And, is that something that you felt might have taken you away from music at any point?
After the show, yeah, totally. I mean, I went off the rails for a while. It was for a few months, for a good month. Like I said, I really struggled with the sort of paranoia of it. Like, everything. I mean, I was losing my hair at the time. As a 27-year-old, if you feel that, how was it looking today? So many you develop these little nervous tics of checking your hair and like checking, you look all right and you can't even go out to put the bins out without somebody taking a picture of you. And it's just like, leave me alone. I wasn't, and you sit in a restaurant and pubs, what's everyone staring at? And, sometimes you have good or bad days, right? Sometimes you just want to be in the corner and just sort of sulk or do what you want or just not be interrupted. And you couldn't have that. You couldn't have that at all. Even if people were polite, which 9 times out of 10 they were, come and have a picture for, this person, that person. It was still an intrusion, but yes, you ask for that, but you're not prepared for it. And for a month or so, I hid away, I guess, and then it flips a coin. Then, and you think, actually, there's something in this. This I can get the front of the queue of this nightclub. I can get this, that, and the other. You enjoy the perks then, and then unfortunately, the perks for me ran alongside with trying to do stuff in the business, and I think I burnt the candle a bit. Enjoyed the fame that came with it. And all the perks, and music did take a backseat for quite a while, because of that. And then you realize that's very much short-lived, and the reasons you got into it were music, and then you can refocus again. But some people can lose themselves in that world very easily. I'm lucky that I got through that all right.
Oh, definitely. And we will talk about where you are now with your music and creating new music. I always remember the quote from the Stone Roses' Ian Brown, where he described it as the filthiest business in the universe, the music industry. And you've got all these talented people want to get into that industry. Once you started dealing with music executives, releasing singles, again, did you think to yourself, I've made it, I've realised my dream? Or in the back of your mind, James, were you thinking this industry is not what I expected it to be?
It was the most disillusioned I've been in terms of music. And, literally I was signed to Sony after a year after the show. And I've never been so disillusioned, never been so, what is this about? What are these people talking about? I just felt like, it was... to be right in the eye of the storm and feel so far away from what it is you really want to do, because I was still not creating my own thing. I was still sort of cap in hand, as it were. It's still having songs written for me, still being told to wear a certain thing, have your hair a certain way. The irony now. It's very much just a commodity. And I realized I was going to be chewed up and spat out as quick as the last one came and went. It was I was aware it was a very short, it possibly a short-lived shelf life within, if you come from these shows. And even though I was in the Sony meetings with all the top guys, I knew my days were, the clock was ticking. So I don't look back on that time fondly at all. I had no control in it, and it was not a fun experience, and full of people that turned their back on you and twisted the knife the minute you walked out the door. It was tough.
I mean, it sounds really tough. For someone looking at a music career, certainly from my era, you would look at these big shows like you've mentioned, Top of the Pops, and you had the opportunity. You appeared on that show, and that was a staple. I mean, you think back to some of the classic performances. Have you seen someone on there and you thought to yourself, I heard musicians talking about the first time they seen David Bowie on Top of the Pops, and for me, it was probably the Happy Mondays and the Stone Roses, Oasis, that kind of thing. Is there any elements of it that you look back on and you think, that was a good memory, that was something I'll take to the grave?
Yeah, of that time, that'll be one of them. Top of the Pops for sure, just because of what it stood for and what I watched growing up and all the things you aspired to. And then you're finally in that moment for 3.5 minutes, it's Top of the Pops is about you, and that's I didn't take any of it for granted and take any of it lightly. Just wasn't guided through it. And I'm glad that it lasted a bit longer than that initial blast of fame. It was because it was quite intense. On every TV show, the front of every magazine. I'm glad there were moments after that I was able to take stock and look around and think, okay, I'm in the Albert Hall. This is on TV. And actually be aware of where I was and the surroundings. Because if it had been an overnight thing, and like you said, how do people recover from that? 1 minute you're in the penthouse, and then you're back in the bottom. It's that can mess with your mind. So I think partly because of the upbringing in the valleys and the apprenticeship, I saw it for what it was, and realized that this was in the sort of roller coaster of a career, this was the top, and there would be another trough. So I just wanted to level out. That was just a bit too much all in one go at that time. But I do look back on some of the moments and think, Top of the Pops being one, Eurovision being another. There's some moments that I was really present and thought, wow, this is pretty good.
I mean, Eurovision, it's one of these things, again, that you remember throughout your youth and your upbringing. I remember Radiohead once saying that they would love to write a Eurovision song, but the record companies or the managers were always dead against it. I mean, talk to us about that as well, because there's always this big kind of tactical element to it. If they don't want the UK to win, certain countries will vote you down and all that. Did you experience that yourself?
Yeah, I mean, I did it the year after Gemini famously got 0 points, So, I mean, I was on a high, I couldn't fail, even if I had a disaster, it was going to be okay. But it was all right. The song was okay, it wasn't my song. I didn't write it, but it was okay. I knew it wasn't a winning song. You could tell, it was just, but we had looking back, that results that we had was kind of all right, considering the last 2 decades. It's actually, we did all right. But, yeah, you were aware that outside of the music element, you had no chance because of it, the political nature of it. You thought, well, they're not going to vote. I know Greece is going to vote for. They're not going to do that. You're aware of this, but all I was concerned with was the performance, just to go on and do a good job. Because if you don't, as much as people laugh it off and think, it's Eurovision, we don't take it seriously. If you mess that up, your career's over, and or you could have a career as a laughing stock because of it. So I just wanted to do my bit and perform really well. And then the rest is out of your hands, like everything, But you're aware that you're not going to win it. But it just didn't want to embarrass yourself. You just want to be able to work after that day. Because for me, it was just another gig, It's just where I was at that time. And I just, like every gig, you want to do a good job.
Yeah. Another one that I'm sure you will look back fondly on is where you are asked to write and perform a song for your football team. Now, I'm a massive football fan, James, huge football fan. And I think music and football goes hand in hand. You go to the games, you sing the songs. There is that community element at a football stadium that you get in other areas of life where singing is prevalent. Like, if you go to a church and you sing songs, if you're on a march, a protest march, you sing songs. If you're at a football game. So talk to me about your love of Cardiff City and how that developed into you writing an FA Cup final song.
Yeah, incredible, isn't it? I mean, I got my dad to play him for music and football, really. When, I was a mascot, I think, back in 1983 when I was 7, and I watched football, Cardiff City football in the old 4th division. I'm no glory hunter. We had decades of, a couple of thousand fans at most, watching Tuesday night games against Exeter in the cold. We were proper Cardiff fans. And I just loved it. I wanted to be a football player, but I wasn't good enough. And I used to play for the Junior Bluebirds, as it was called, and then music took over. So I thought, as you can imagine, combining your passion and love for a football club you've had since you were 7 and your other passion, music, and putting them together, that was incredible. I remember my friend watching Sky Sports News at work, and he saw Dave Jones as their manager and Peter Ridsdale on Sky. And then I was sat next to them with a pen and paper and a football. He goes, "Have you just signed to Cardiff?" And I know Cardiff are bad, but I was like 30 or whatever. I said, "No, it's the FA Cup song," and I think if you're a musician, you want to be a footballer. If you're a footballer, you want to be a musician. So just to be involved down at the training ground, there was a lot of training going on back in Dave Jones's day, mostly playing darts. You get the likes of Robbie Fowler, Trevor Sinclair, Hasselbank was there. We had the young Aaron Ramsey. There's a lot of names there. And just to be in and amongst the lads like that and be a part of a team, part of your football team, just to even walk on a pitch, just to be involved with the club, the training ground, get the kit, we're all big kids when it comes to football. And, what a time shooting the video. I'm stood there, this is my song I've written. It was in stages, I wrote the song and then obviously got the official song and we're doing the video and I'm like, look, there's Trevor Sinclair, there's Jimmy Floyd Hasselbank singing the chorus with me. And this is surreal. This is like incredible. And then the acid test after that is whether the supporters embrace it, and then when you go to the next game and there's 20,000 there all singing your FA Cup song and you sat there, I'm sat there with my mum who goes to the games with me, and it's that makes, honestly, if I had any hair, it'd be stood up. That makes me tingle now just thinking about something I created in about 10 minutes, if the truth be known. Literally being sung in the terraces. That's a dream. That was a dream gig. That was an incredible time. Yeah. I don't know if you can see which side it is. That's the disc they give me at the back there above the. I've still got it. Pride of place there.
Superb. I mean, you might not have played for the club, but Surely that's the next best thing, James. You know, what you did was the next best thing. Absolutely tremendous. Now, there's always this kind of downside. You think about fame, and like we've spoken about, an industry chewing you up and spitting you out, James. Some people turn to drugs, narcotics, alcohol. Other people have mental health issues, but there was an addiction that got a grip of you during your life as well, James, and that was gambling. You had a gambling addiction. When did you realise that you had an issue with gambling?
Do you know what? I think I've always known, but it was always either under control or wasn't making enough money to make a big enough dent. But even when I think back to being in I went to college for a couple of weeks. I think I spent my student loan on in a bookies on a greyhound race, and I didn't even know what greyhounds were. I just went in and put it all on. You know, it was always part of my life growing up in the valleys, playing cards in the pubs, in the snooker club. Gambling was a big part of, you know, what people did and still do, I guess, back there. And my dad's once again. Was involved in the fruit machine business. He made fruit machines, so they were always in the house. So it was very much a part. I was aware of gambling my whole life. That's what I'm trying to say. But I think throughout my teens, I'd go to a casino. You know, it was sort of under control, or I'd do it, and I'd always, whenever I did it, I wouldn't just put a pound on. Whatever I had, I would spend. You know, but then maybe I'd go weeks and months without thinking about it. But being on tour in, I guess in my 30s, I did a lot of musical theatre tours, like. And the 8 shows a week, and you're all across the UK and staying in hotels. You've got 20 hours on your own, you know, no matter where you are, just bored with an iPad. And then it slowly and surely became more and more of a problem. And I was on a tour called Let It Be. It was a Beatles show, getting great reviews. But it got that bad during that I was gambling during the show. You know, I had my iPad on stage behind an amp, you know, and I'd be awake for 4 or 5 days gambling. And borrowing money, putting money on credit cards. And it totally had a grip on me, I reckon, for a decade, you know, and it's been 2 years, touch wood, since I've gambled. And there were a few relapses before that when I tried to address the problem seriously. But it's crippling, really, really, really tough.
This is the thing, you're talking there about something that could be the high point of anyone's career, you know, playing Paul McCartney on stage, and you're telling us what's happening behind the curtain, quite literally, and you're going through this agony of gambling addiction. I mean, you really don't know, as part of that audience or as just an observer like myself, what is going on behind the curtain. I mean, fair play to you for talking about it first and foremost, James, but how did you tackle it?
I guess I didn't tackle it. In the end, it brought me down because, you know, like you said, the shows, you know, it's one of those addictions that you could, like you said, at the height of your career, no one would ever know. Maybe with alcoholism, if I'd have turned up, you know, drunk every night, it would have, you know, you'd have noticed that, you know. But with this, you could keep it quiet. But I guess I'd go 4 or 5 days without sleeping, and I was losing a lot of weight. And I looked pretty rough. And my mum came to visit me on tour, and I think she said, you know, you expect a certain amount of weight loss, and you know, with the schedule we were keeping, but she said, what's going on? You know, there's something else going on here. And I just broke down, you know, and told her everything, because you struggle with the guilt. You know, you feel like you let everyone down, and it's you just feel so bad and so guilty, and but it had total control over me. And I just told my mum and told a few friends, and then the minute I did that, that was the start of a very bumpy recovery, but that was the start of it. I just had to own up. You know, I wish I did it earlier, and that's why I told everyone and released my story a year or so ago, because I didn't feel there was enough help for people around. So I wanted to make sure, and so many people have thanked me for doing that it's made it. I look back and it's such a good decision, because even if it helped one person, I was happy. But a lot of people have thanked me, and it's kept me accountable. It's really made me want to help other people and raise awareness into how silent this can be for someone. And seemingly, as you said, if you'd have come to see me in the West End that night, potentially you'd have had a good night, watched the show, and I'm absolutely crumbling inside, you know. And the minute the show finishes, I'm back. I'm driving with the iPad on, you know, gambling, and then staying awake and, you know, losing everything I had. So it's a shocker.
Absolutely. I mean, in terms of your songwriting, creativity, your music, how big a part did that play in your redemption? How important was it to get you back out of that hole?
Well, I just writing this new album over the last year, I thought I dealt with it. I thought I dealt with the gambling addiction. I really did. I thought it was all covered. But it was funny, as we were in lockdown and we were forced to stop, and the only thing left was a creative process. I realized I had a lot more delving into that to do, and all these sort of songs. Not that the whole album is about addiction, but there's a lot of it in there. It was very cathartic. I'd write a song, and realize, well, I'm still going through this, and this is helping. I had to put myself. What I hope that my album is honest, and people can hear that and relate to that in the lyrics. I had to put myself back in those positions in hotel rooms. Crying at night, sleeping on the bathroom floor because that's all I thought I was worth. Curled up in a ball, not eating for 3 days. Whatever it was, however dark and bad it got, I had to put myself back in those situations to write this album honestly. And yeah, it was tough. It was a tough process to go through last year. But coming out of it, I really felt like I put all the gambling stuff and a lot of other things, a lot of other issues in boxes, put a bow on them, and moved on. So I think it was a real therapeutic thing for me to do with this album because, it really helped. And I feel now a lot more bulletproof than I did even a year ago.
That's great to hear. And it's great to hear that your art and what your craft has allowed you to get over and get stronger after your addiction problems as well. Now, talk to us about your latest single. Introduce it to us. Tell us a wee bit about it.
Yeah, this is a song called The Rest of Our Lives from my album. The new album's called All the Fours. And this was a song I actually wrote. I was supposed to get married last summer in July. And obviously we had to, my fiance's from America. She was supposed to be a wedding over in Wisconsin. So we had to cancel that. And this was supposed to be a surprise, this song I was writing for her. I was going to play it at the wedding. So it wasn't ever meant to be on an album. But as time went on, we canceled the wedding, this song was recorded. I thought, well, it just feels like a good time to bring this out now. It's January, February, a new year. There's a bit of hope on the horizon. It's a positive message. It's a message for the future. So I thought, it might disappoint the wedding guests. They've already heard it, but, let's get it out and try and spread a bit of positivity.
Oh, definitely. So here we have James with Rest of Our Lives.
Something we may never understand. Real love does not fade away like hearts drawn in the sand. So let's start making plans for the rest of our lives. We could be together for the rest of our lives. Nothing could be better for the rest of our lives, from now until forever.
So that was James Fox with Rest of Our Lives. Fantastic. And it's great to hear the backstory as well. And I'm pretty sure your wedding guests won't be too disappointed that they didn't get the first listen of that as well, James. Now, talking to some people in your walk of life, what they've said to me, and I go back to, let's say, punk, for example, a lot of the movements in music have come from a reaction to what's going on politically or what's going on in the UK at that time. Obviously, we've got a global issue at the moment, and you've got all this creativity. And although a lot of musicians are not being supported, most of them are not being supported. What you might find on the back end of this, once we come out of the other end of the pandemic, is that this whole revolution of music, the creativity, the outpouring of this craft and this art will basically reclaim music for the musicians in many ways. What's your thoughts on that? Because obviously what you can do now is you can set up social media profiles, your own platform, you can record, you can release music a lot easier than you did back in the day, and you can use all these platforms to your advantage. So you might have the creative power behind your music, but you may also, per unit, if you like, be getting paid more. So what's your thoughts on music going forward for James Fox?
Yeah, it's been a shock. It's been a while since I've released anything, and as you said, the industry's changed anyway since back in the day. But when we touched upon earlier on about being signed to Sony and having literally no control at all, I thought I was in the epicenter of the music business and felt, totally out of control. Whereas you're right, over this last year, and this last year has been like no other, obviously. And I was very lucky to have the studio here in the flat. So not only have I got control in the songwriting, the output, it's just me on this album. It's just me, everything. So I mean, that's can be good or bad, but I think there's an honesty that comes with that. And like you said, I don't need any permission to do anything. I can. It's not compromise. I think that's what a lot of people find, that all these albums that will be born out of this time are not compromising. Maybe a lot more truthful. Maybe a lot more. Interesting for the listener. And you're not guided by timelines and being told that this has to happen. And there's, we had so much pressure back when I was signed to Sony. If the first single doesn't do well, then you drop the second one. You can just keep going. You can just keep creating. And I think that's the creative process has become the driver, because it had to have been for the last year, because people can't talk, can't do anything outside. So I think the level of creativity in terms of how much is going to be the output and the quality of it will be improved. I think there'll be some cracking albums on the back of this last year. And like you said, there's no restrictions as to what you can release and when and getting dropped. There's a lot more control. I feel now, I'm not looking for any permission to do this. I can just keep releasing songs and they're there for people to listen to. And I think it's a lot healthier time going forward. And you say about the money, I do miss that. You do want to plug into a network and a framework that the record companies have. It's not a secret that Universal or Sony of this world could have taken my album now and sort of got you on a big TV show or a big radio network. They have a lot of clout in that respect. Mm-hmm. But back in the day, this wouldn't have existed alongside that. And I think there's maybe they needed to rein that in, the control they had. And also we've got more. So I think it's amalgamating, but if it meets in the middle, then great. I think one or the other would leave a lot of acts unsupported, but it's definitely going the right way. I'm excited about going forward because I can do another album. I can do, there's no one's telling me I can't anymore. So that's nice.
No, it is. And what would be great is the audience, people who tune into the State of Music, can support you. They can get onto your sites and your platforms. Where can we find you, James? Where can we buy your latest album?
Yeah, well, if anyone wants a CD, like you said, they're still interested in CDs. The CDs are actually selling physical copies, like directly from my website. So it's jamesfoxsongs.com, if anyone wants actually to have one in their hand. But outside of that, all the streaming platforms, like you said, that they're great for musicians. You're plugged into the world as soon as you upload your song onto these platforms. It's there. So all the usual places. You can get it from everywhere. But the site, if you want an actual copy, James Fox Songs is the place to get it.
Brilliant. Now, James, it's been an absolute pleasure speaking with you today on the State of Music. Thank you for sharing your journey, and we wish you all the best for the future, sir.
Appreciate it. Thanks, Paul. Thanks a lot.